Good afternoon. My name is Chris Adam with Youth Pledge for Employers. I'm delighted to be joined by Anassa from Swank Interiors. Hello there.
Hi there, Chris. How are you?
Yes, I'm not too bad. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for giving up your time to speak with me this afternoon. And I guess my sort of start of a 10 question has to be, can you tell me a little bit about Swank Interiors and what it is you do?
Okay, so Swank Interiors is an interior design practice. I started the business in 2009, so that was 14 years ago now. We do residential and commercial design throughout Norfolk.
And, for someone who's maybe sort of heard the term interior designer, but they maybe don't know what it actually entitles or entails, I should say, if you had to break down sort of, what it means to be an interior designer, how would you describe it?
Interior design is the planning and the the planning and implementation of interiors. So that will start with looking at a building, deciding how it's going to be used, deciding on a layout of how the rooms are going to be within the building, do lighting design. So that's planning where all the lights are, the light switches, the plug sockets, all of those things. Furniture layout, choosing the furniture, and then you get onto the fun bit of choosing the colours, the different fabrics, the different wallpapers and all of those bits as well, and then putting it all together for the client. So that works pretty much the same whether it's a residential home or whether it's an office, shop, hotel. The process is the same. It's just you're using different materials.
And you touched on the process there. And again, speaking as a complete layman, as I say, look at me, I'm clearly not fashionable, know nothing about colours or the way things should look. But, so if, as you say, you have a client come to you with, maybe half an idea in mind, as I say, and obviously you've explained the process there, in terms of what it looks like actually getting to the final product. But how much input does a interior designer have in terms of their vision, what they think something should look like, and how does that work with a client who's maybe got, as I say, a half an idea or maybe even a fully formed idea of what they want the design to look like?
Well, that does vary very much from project to project, and every project is different because some clients will have no idea whatsoever and will want complete input, and will almost want their hand held right the way throughout the process, where other clients will have a bit of an idea and other clients will know exactly the sort of thing they want but just don't know how to achieve it. So it does vary very much. So you have to adapt to each client individually. So, and also the types of clients are quite different, where you might be dealing with a home and you might be dealing with one person, you might be dealing with a couple, or you might have a whole family and animals to take into consideration as well. And the same with a business. It might just be the business owner, or you may have a whole committee of the directors of a business who all have input. So it does vary. So you have to be really adaptable and be able to.
When you talk about adaptability, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, and be able to change the way that you work depending on who you're working for.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. There was a little bit of lag on my end. And as I say, so yeah, you touch on adaptability there. And if we talk about some of the skills, whether they be personality traits or soft skills that would serve someone well as an interior designer, I think clearly, obviously, you need to have some kind of creativity there, or a passion to be creative. As you've touched there, yeah, you need to be adaptable and take into account, as you say, every project's individual requirements. What other sort of personality traits and skills have you found for your experience serve you well in this kind of role?
Well, there's lots of different skills because I think the natural ability to be creative is really important, because if not, it's not really something that can be taught. It's one of those things that it's instinct a lot of the time, with what should be used in a position or colour or whatever. I think that's the first thing, is you have to have that within you. But then the other skills that you need to be able to listen, to be able to communicate, because communicating your ideas across to a client is so important so that everybody understands. You have to be organising the ordering, the receiving of product, organising trades, so electricians, plumbers, to put a project together. There's a lot of people skills it required, because you are working, although, for example, I work alone within my business, I do work with a lot of other trades and other businesses to create the finished project. So a lot of people think that with being a designer, you are just being creative all the time, but actually, when you're doing your training, you are told quite early on, it's 5% creative, 95% admin, because creating the idea is one thing, but when you go to put it all together, that's when all of the other skills come into it. Personally, this is my second career. I had a career in retail before. So for first 14 years when I left school, I worked in retail management, or worked my way up to retail management. And all the skills that I learned throughout that time are things that have been really important within what I do now, because I am managing people, and it's even harder because they're not people who actually work for you. They have their own businesses too. So that's a really big part, is working with people.
And you got me thinking about another point during that, when you sort of spoke about, as you say, sort of other people, and in terms of how to put it, because of sort of social media and television, I think people have never been more informed about some of the different things you could do in interior design. If you see what I mean, whether you're going through social media, you see the different people's houses, you know, there's plenty of TV shows about it, you know, with sort of, you know, with all that access to information, there's probably lots of young people out there who probably think like, yeah, interior design, I could do a bit of that because I've seen this, you know, person on Instagram, or I've watched this TV show. From your own experience, what would be the advice, or maybe the things you'd advise a young person could be doing, you know, to sort of help them, you know, show that seriousness, show that intent, and would help them, you know, sort of on a career path into interior design?
Well, I think a lot of it is knowing the basics, where it's very easy to think, I want to create this shiny room, but actually it's going back to the beginning. And one of the things that really has helped me is, my grandfather was a builder by trade. And as a child, I always lived in homes that were being renovated. I'd go to work with my granddad in holidays. So I watched that building process, because knowing how things are built and knowing that side of things, knowing about the products that you're using. So for example, if you're looking to get a Saturday job or something like that whilst you're studying, don't think, oh, well, everybody's getting a job in a clothes shop, so that's just what I'll do because I love colour and I love it. Think about it in another way and think, actually, why don't I work in a DIY shop? Why don't I work in a carpet shop? Or so you know some of the materials that you'll actually be using. When I left school, my first job was in a fabric shop. So my retail experience started in a fabric shop selling curtain fabric. So I know in great detail the whole soft furnishing side of things. I know how things are put together from working with my granddad, and I think that those bits are the bits that really help. And because, as I say, a lot of the creative things are the bits that are really easy to you, the putting together the colours, putting together the plans and things like that, where it's so important to know the technical side.
Yeah, no, I completely agree and understand. And actually, you make an interesting point there, where you sort of, as I said, everyone sort of, how to put it, it's really easy to find that, as you say, sort of the surface level information, you know, like, oh, you know, this is what the finished article looks like. But as you say, actually, if you can articulate the process from, as you say, you know, from the very beginning, from when something's being built through to the final product, as I say, that kind of grounding and foundation, if you excuse the pun, in, you know, in a career path would be very beneficial to someone coming into the field. And to say, I guess it shows that extra level of, so as you said there, that sort of that intent and that willingness to want to learn.
Absolutely, because it is those bits. And for me, we're working with builders on a daily basis, by having that understanding of how it goes together, they are more willing to actually do what I want because I'm able to sort of say to them, well, if we do it this way, and then you can work alongside people better as well if you've got that understanding.
Yeah, and sort of talking about that sort of, the working days as well. Like I ask all the employers I do some employer talks with about sort of typical days, and I know in any profession there still is no such thing as a typical day. So I would imagine that the good days and challenging days in your role are, on the good days, as I say, you are, getting to do the creative part of the job, that 5%, as you said, or you're getting to see the finished result and see, the positive responses from the client. And I'm guessing, the challenging days are, are they days where you're having creative blocks, or days when, as I say, something, a certain resource you need isn't available in time or something, so yeah, from your experience, what are the good and challenging days like?
Yeah, absolutely. The best days are when you see that finished room, the client goes in for the first time and goes, wow, that is the best day. The challenging days are very much the supply of goods and relying upon other people to be there to do the work for you, as in the implementation. With supply of goods, for example, I like to be really creative with my designs, so I don't use the same, I use products from various different suppliers. For example, one of my current commercial projects is only a very small project, but I'm using 17 different finishes just for the walls and floors from 14 different suppliers. So you're relying a lot of people for everything to come together. So it's very stressful at that point where you're waiting for everything to come and is everything in stock. The supply of product has become much more difficult to rely on recently. And also tradesmen are very busy, so you book them in advance and you just hope that they stick to their words. So it is just relying on all of those bits to come together at once. So that's the stressful part.
And sometimes when I've been out and about speaking to young people who are interested in a creative career path like this, one thing that maybe deters them or puts them off is they're worried about the subjectivity of the career, in terms of, I say, every single client you deal with is going to have a different opinion. As I say, you're going to, what you think, is the best idea in the world, they may not like. And I think some people get attracted to, maybe, should we say, safer career paths, in terms of like, no, you need to be sort of doing this particular thing. It's the same time each time. There's a right way of doing it. So how do you cope in a role where, as I say, sort of everyone's got an opinion, if you see what I mean? And so it's about, as I say, making sure that, how do you overcome that? How do you work with people, as I say, when people have probably never been more opinionated than ever?
Well, the first thing I have to do is think, I'm working on, especially if it's a home, it's probably the biggest investment that person is making. So it's a really big deal to them. It's a big deal to me, but it's an even bigger deal to them, because they're spending a lot of money, which they've worked very hard for, on this building, which they're going to live in all of the time, often. So you have to kind of think about it and then take a step back, and you have to sort of almost think like them, and it's quite a lot of psychology involved as well, and you kind of get to know your clients. And I always like to get to know my clients quite well before I start actually designing. We talk through a lot of ideas. I like a guided tour of their existing home if they're moving, or what they've done, what they like, what they think are successful. Is there any places they like to go on holiday? Is there any hotels they like to visit, restaurants? All of these things, get to know them, so you kind of can build up a picture of their lifestyle, because a lot of the things about designing a home is about other people's lifestyle. So you have to kind of step back from being you. And I think this is the bit that's really important for people to realise, that when you see it on Instagram, that's what that person likes. And it's very easy to do your own home. When you're doing it for somebody else, you have to completely remove yourself and think what's right for them. So that's kind of what I do. I don't think of it personally. There's some of the homes that I design that I would love to live in, but not all of them, because they're not to my personal taste. They are for the client. And I do get quite a lot of my work because the way that I work is very much like that, where other designers may have their own set style. So there is actually a way of having a business in interior design, or a career in interior design, if you have a very set style, but it does narrow down, obviously, your client base.
And you remind me of another good point there in terms of what I say a point, something that I've again experienced with young people when I've been out and about. You know, your passion clearly comes across, and it's contagious and it's brilliant. And sometimes when I speak to young people, they're worried that if they do a job which is, you know, related to something they are passionate about, whether it's something they've done as a hobby or something they've done in their spare time, you know, to provide them with enjoyment. I guess they get worried if they start to do it as their, whether it be a full-time or a part-time job, that, you know, it would take some of the fun out of it if it becomes their everyday, if you see what I mean. So it may sound a silly question, but how do how does your job sort of, how do you keep passionate about it? How do you keep the enthusiasm? How do you sort of stop, the fact that you're doing it every day, draining your passion for it?
I think as an interior designer, it's not a job to me, it is just a way of life. And my friends and family know that if we're going out for dinner or if we're going away, I will sit there probably in a restaurant. I'll sit there for the first 10 minutes looking around, analysing the interior, because it's what I do. So I think that's one of those things that I think comes from the part of if it's natural to you, that is what you do. So it's just something that you do subconsciously, actually. I don't always realise until somebody says to me, you're doing it again. But and I think that if you really love it, you will just keep on enjoying it, because there's always things changing, there's always new things happening and new things to inspire. So I don't think you ever really can get bored.
And when you talk about the sort of the new things, as again, as I say, I'm not fashionable, I'm not trendy, but I know there's always, as you said, ever changing new trends, new fashions, new materials, new companies with new products coming out. So is it sometimes, do you sometimes feel pressurized, as I say, to stay on top of all of these different trends? Because, as I say, it could be something one of your clients is maybe discussing with you, or maybe something they expect you to propose.
Absolutely. And with the internet, with social media, it's even more important, because everybody is so much more aware of everything that's going on around them. So it's really important to know what the trends are, to understand them, because clients will talk to you about them because they've seen them on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And so you have to know about them, but I don't necessarily follow them or use them, because I think once they become a trend that my clients already know, it's past me designing with them. I have to design with the things before they become trendy. So my clients are the first people to have
it. I know it's really interesting, and it's sort of, I need to sort of wrap this up now for time wise. And so the last question sort of I want to ask, and you touched on it a little bit already, where you talked about your journey in retail before, getting into interior design. And I've asked this question to all the employees I've spoken to. And if you could go back and speak to say a sort of 17, 18-year-old maybe version of yourself, you're about to go out on your career journey again. And, if you could take into account, say, maybe mistakes you've made and learned from, successes you've had, what's the one piece of career advice you would go back and give your younger self?
I would actually say that everything you do is helpful to get you to where you want to be. There's nothing that I would change. Because every experience, every job that I've done has developed me into the person that I am and made me able to do what I want to do and what I do now. And I think, especially with interior design, I think it's very hard to do it as a job probably before you're 30, to be fully fledged and doing it and going to see clients, because, like I say, it's such a big investment for a client. They have to really trust you. You have to have travelled, you have to have seen different things and almost lived in a home on your own to understand the technicalities of it, I think. So there's nothing that I would, no advice other than don't worry, because everything you do, as long as you do it well, is going to help you on your journey.